Hello, Ben here. Hope you're well and welcome to episode 15 of Benjy's Cafe podcast. Joining me in Benjy's Cafe this week is the actor, musician and director, Ben Stock. Ben is one of the UK's leading cabaret artists and most in-demand pantomime dames. His West End debut was alongside Barry Humphries in New Edna the Spectacle at the Theatre Royal Haymarket, before playing Eugene in Greece at the Cambridge Theatre London. He starred as Lumiere in Disney's Beauty and the Beast and appeared in Chitty, Chitty, Bang, Bang at the iconic London Palladium.
Just before you went on stage left, there was a mirror and everybody used to stop and just, check your hat, sort your tie, whatever. And it still makes me go cold to think that I was sorting my tie in the places where Sammy Davis Jr. and Sophie Tucker and Judy Garland and Frank Sinatra, all those people had, done exactly the same thing.
In this episode, we follow Ben's path from young performer to successful professional. We discuss how staying proactive and creating opportunities is crucial in the entertainment industry, and Ben and I discuss the joy of performing and spreading happiness. Pop the kettle on and enjoy listening. Welcome to Benjy's Cafe, Ben Stock. Good morning, Ben. How are you?
I'm good, Ben. It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you for such a long time.
I know. Was it 1954, wasn't it? The Brigadoon workshop?
Absolutely, yeah. Up in Hull.
Yeah, musical theatre aficionados do not know that Brigadoon started in Hull.
And some may say it's where it should have stayed.
Well, you look great. You look like you've had a good night, Ben. I believe, was it Barry Manilow last night at the Palladium?
Ben, I'm such a fanalo. I really am. We went to see...
I love that, a fanalo.
Yeah. Went to see him at the Palladium last night with my mum and my hubby Julian. He's vocally amazing. He's 80 in 2 weeks or something. And he did an hour and 40 straight through. He was absolutely brilliant. It was stunning.
My God.
I've got my glow stick on the dining room table.
It just appeals to each generation, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So many classics. Did he do all the classics?
Absolutely did Can't Smile Without You and Mandy and Bermuda Triangle and Copacabana. It was just brilliant. There's banger after banger after banger. And I do some of his music in my cabarets. I was singing along going, my God, he's still singing these in the original key. I've got them down a third.
That's amazing. But what vocal stamina for a performer that age? That's so impressive, isn't it?
I guess because he's singing the songs he's sung all his life, it's that muscle memory thing as well.
Yeah.
It's there. But it was just brilliant. It was absolutely packed as well.
And how joyous, Ben, isn't it? That's the beauty of live theatre, that live experience, that it's just feel good. Like when you float out of the theatre, especially the Palladium like that, isn't it just wonderful?
Yeah, and it's always a treat to go to the Palladium. It always feels like a bit of an event. And as you walk up the stairs, there's all the posters of the previous shows and the stars that have appeared there. And it was just brilliant. It was just such a joyous night. And
you mentioned all the posters there at the Palladium, and there's something about that era. Don't you wish sometimes that you were born in that era to enjoy it? I mean, crikey,
absolutely.
I do.
Well, you mentioned I did Chitty at the Palladium, which was amazing to just... There's two stories here. One is there was a mirror. It's still there, I believe. Just before you went on stage left, there was a mirror and everybody used to stop and just, check your hat, sort your tie, whatever. And name dropping here of the highest order. I was doing that one day and Biggins sort of crept up behind me and said, imagine the faces that have looked back through that mirror. And it still makes me go cold to think that I was sorting my tie in the places where Sammy Davis Jr. and Sophie Tucker and Judy Garland and Frank Sinatra, all those people had, done exactly the same thing, just checking, that the hair was all right or whatever. And then there was a wonderful guy there called Linford, who had been a follow spot operator there for years and years and years. He was one of the Windrush generation. And I got to know him quite well. And the Palladium hadn't undergone any renovation at that point. And he took me up to the archive room, and there was damp coming down the walls. There were all these posters, and everything was just kind of rotting. And he said to me, help yourself. He said, as long as you don't take the only copy of something, help yourself. So I came out with, and we've got some of them framed in sort of old Palladium pantos with Cilla Black and Frankie Howard and Molly Sugden and Danny LaRue. And then I've got some of the variety bills with Shirley MacLaine and Debbie Reynolds, which when I went to see Debbie Reynolds, she actually signed it for me.
Oh,
So
my word.
that history is just so... It's so brilliant to own a little bit of that, because it's a world that's completely gone. You know, we probably will never see the like of that world again.
How did it feel just knowing that, you know, you were going to be in a great show like Chitty, as you mentioned, there at the Palladium on that stage where all those greats had performed?
It was amazing because it although it seats, you know, I don't know how many, 2,300 or something like that, it actually feels really intimate. And that's because it was a variety house. There actually isn't a bad seat in the Palladium. So even last night when we were sat at the top, you feel really close to the stage because it was built like almost to hug you. It's not very deep. It's quite high, but it's not very deep.
Ben, it's you know, we've known each other for a long time. First worked with you, I think it was 2000 in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat on tour. And I have to say, I think I'd done the show for a year before you joined the cast. You were just a breath of fresh air, Ben. You're so talented, that's a given, but you're so kind and appreciative of the opportunity to be on stage. It was just so lovely to work with somebody so kind, and I just would love to take you back to your first introduction to music. And
I think my dad always wanted me to play the piano. That's where it started. He always said to me, if you can play the piano, you can always earn yourself a fiver. £5.
Wow.
You know, you can always earn a fiver if you can play the piano. As I often say, sometimes it's, you know, 35, 48 years later, I'm still earning a fiver for the money hasn't gone up much. But anyway.
I know, my goodness.
And I had a piano teacher who also taught singing. And to be honest, she was terrifying. And she said I had to go to her singing group. So I just went because I was too scared to say no. And we were called the Maytones. And we used to go around old people's homes singing all these old Gracie Field songs and what have you, which is still the stuff I sing today. And then from that, I realised that I loved it, and I wasn't academic. I wasn't very good at school. So it became something that I knew I could do. I didn't even know it existed as a profession, you know. Then I really wanted, I guess it was from the Roly Polies. I saw them in pantomime at Bristol, and I wanted to learn to tap dance. Wow. And it's hysterical, isn't it? And they used to be on the Les Dawson show on a Saturday night, all that Saturday night variety.
Oh, man.
The Two Ronnies, I loved. I was talking about the Two Ronnies the other day, and I just loved it. And all those sitcoms that were sort of like variety as well. Heidi High is still my favourite programme ever in the world. And Hello Hello and IB, they were like variety shows, really.
Yeah.
But literally walking into St Mary's Players, which was my old amateur society, which I am still very much connected with. But walking in and hearing that group of people singing "It's Today" from Maine was just like the moment that I went, okay, this is sort of, I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was sort of home.
Isn't
and
it
then
funny?
the amateur world was massive in my teenage years.
I don't know if it's like a family thing then, but just watching those shows, feeling safe with generations of your family, but certainly performing-wise, just that feeling of belonging and feeling safe. And when you're not too sure how life's going to go, that feeling's wonderful at that age, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a real elf in our we watch so much television now, there's so much of it available, but I think going back to what we used to watch, which was the Two Ronnies and Heidi High and Are You Being Served, you would sit down in multi-generations, like you say. You'd sit down with so the kids, the parents and the grandparents could all sit down and watch it. And when John Inman said something, I would laugh because it was because of the rhythm, but the adults would get it on a completely different level. Yeah. Which is also where the best pantomime people work from. You know, the first panto I did, I remember you coming, was with the Crankies. And I was a bit like, really? The Crankies? That's a bit naff. I think we did 110 shows or something in Wolverhampton. We ran till February.
That's right,
I belly laughed every single one of those shows from what they did on that stage. They were masters at that, and they would say things about bus passes, and the kids saw Jeanette as the little boy talking about his bus pass, and the adults saw her as a 62-year-old woman talking about her, retirement back. And so everybody got it on a different level. And I think there's a real gulf, because the only television that everybody watches now are things like, I think Strictly's the exception. That was a real eye-opener to me, that somebody, because very often comedians like to keep their punchlines to themselves.
Yeah.
But they were so generous. And actually, I watched Janie D do something a bit like this. And her first job on Blackpool Pier was as a dancer for the Crankies. And
No way.
the interviewer said, you're very good at comedy. Where did that come from? And she said it came from standing in the wings for 16 weeks on Blackpool Pier, watching the Crankies twice a day, get belly laughs.
Yeah.
Constantly. And she said, that's where my comedy timing came from. And I was like, I'm in good company being a fan of the Crankies.
But interesting.
With Olivier Award winner Janie D.
Well, likewise, I remember when I first did Beauty and the Beast on the first tour. Gosh, I think, was that 2001? I can't remember, Ben, crikey. But anyway, Barry James, who I'd seen in Sweeney Todd at the National, he was playing Cogsworth. He played at the Dominion as well. And likewise, just seeing him work a crowd differently every single night. He could judge the crowd. He could judge the feeling of an audience that evening, and pitch differently. The skill involved, it was unbelievable, and you can learn so much from watching these established pros, can't you?
Absolutely. The best place to learn it, I went to Guildford and I did 3 years at drama school, and obviously I learned a lot there, but it's not until you're out in the business actually working. You learn nothing from being on your phone in a dressing room. You learn nothing. Get in the wings. Don't get in the way, but get in the wings.
Yeah.
And watch. When you're working with brilliant people, why would you not soak that up like a sponge?
At what point in your development, whilst you were still living in Bristol as a youngster, did that switch turn on where it's like, okay, I want to do this for a living now. I'm going to start looking at places to go and where to train. I mean, Guildford, what a reputation that has.
Yeah, I don't really. I guess when I started playing parts with the amateurs, I started off because I was always tall. I was always in the I did very little youth theatre. I was more in the adult groups because I was so I was a foot and a half. I know you know this feeling. Yeah. I was sort of a foot and a half above all the other people my age, but my voice hadn't broken, so I was still up there, like singing the alto line, but stood with the men's chorus in Annie Get Your Gun.
Giving it Barry Gibb in Annie Get Your Gun.
Yeah, and then they did Oklahoma, I think was really my first sort of big part, and I played Will Parker, and that was the moment I thought, this is really what I want to do with my life. But I always felt like, is it too risky? Nobody in the family was from the theatre, where my parents were both incredibly supportive always. But, and it was all those phrases like, something to fall back on, and what if it doesn't work? And then eventually, because I wasn't very academic, it was sort of a lack of options to do anything else. It was that or work in the Disney store, which was my Saturday job. And there ain't nothing wrong with working in the Disney store. But I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do all of my life. I auditioned for Guildford because they had a degree course, and it was a great place for me to go because I was a very young 18-year-old, very young.
Really?
And I think if I'd gone to one of the London drama schools, I think I would have struggled. But I grew up near Bath, between Bristol and Bath. Bath was where I went to school, and Guildford's not a million miles from Bath, really, in its feel. So I settled in eventually there and had a great time. I mean, it was good, but it was really when I started working that I feel that I came into my own and and found my little way. And I didn't have a huge amount of self-confidence at that time. That came a bit later for me. And so there were people literally walking and going, they're lucky to have me. And I was like,
gosh,
terrified to put a foot wrong, putting my ballet tights on 2 hours early in case I was late,
It takes me that long anyway, Ben, even now.
Yeah, it does now. I can't reach my feet. Do I have a helper? I don't want to get political, but that's where the government, every government, and this is part across all parties, miss the point with drama in schools. It's not about making the next Judi Dench. It's not about making the next, well, let's hope not the next Ben Harlow and Ben Stocks. I think there's enough of those around. It's about when you go for a job interview, you're able to stand up and present yourself and talk to people. That's what it's about. And using your imagination to create situations where you can talk to people. That's what it's about. And that's why, and especially I think it's more important now with iPhones and iPads and videos and where attention span and things, everything's done for you. We've got a generation of kids growing up where their toys talk back to them.
And it's about
It's really
installing
that
that confidence, isn't it? To be able to interact with different... And when you get within a company, whatever you do for a living, if you have the empathy to... to connect with people, that's so lovely, isn't it? To have that quality. And I've seen you, work a room, and it's so important and lovely to make people feel included. Ultimately, isn't it? So
I do wish schools would do drama music for that purpose, not to make any more stars. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, it's about making children happy, isn't it? To see them enjoy themselves.
Yeah. And you have to listen, which we don't always do. We're not very good at listening anymore. And
we mentioned working together on Joseph, but also we did Beauty and the Beast together. We did the tour of that, I think, for 2 years. Just a sort of double question, really. I did my first pantomime dame this year. You're one of the best dames in the business, Ben. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be, and also quite isolating as a performer, as a company member. You're in and out of costumes all the time. I didn't have too much interaction with the rest of the cast because of that. It's like on stage, do the scene, off stage, new dress on. Also, so I'd love to ask you if you felt that. And also, when you played Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast, I mean, with those arms, my goodness, I remember seeing you backstage. You had somebody to feed you water. And again, was that a case of like you had to save your energy to be the best you could on stage and then just be very quiet off stage?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've only done, as in the Dame world, I've only done Ugly Sister, so I've always had sort of a teammate, as
right.
It were. Yeah, it's like the prostitute said, it's not the work, it's the stairs. It's the changes. That's a Elaine Stritch line. But it is, they're a killer. You wake up and it's, we tend to wear about 10 costumes a show, and you think, I'm going to change my clothes 28 times today. By the time I've got dressed in the morning and then gone, between shit or whatever, you think, I'm changing my clothes 28 times. What is this about?
I know.
But yeah, you have to know your energy levels, I think. And I always sleep between shows, even if I don't sleep on Panto days. I have a blow-up bed it's the first thing I pack when I'm going to Panto is my air bed. And even if I just lie down and shut my eyes and switch the lights off and just have 20 minutes of just going, and then you can get the energy back up.
Yeah. It's just, and again, it's your physical stamina. People don't often think that. They think about vocal stamina, but the physical stamina for a show like that, for when you're playing Lumiere, it's tough, isn't it?
It is, and I also think with Lumiere, with any kind of show where you've got a big costume, you've got your job to wear the costume, to make the costume work, to say your lines, but you've also got like another little job at the back, which is to get through the costume so that it's not just a costume walking on and off stage. So actually, you actually have to do a little bit more work to get through the costume rather than less. I've seen it where people walk on with this fabulous costume, they stand there, and once the audience has gone, great costume, that's it. Then you have to work doubly hard to get through the costume and across the footlights, as I would say. There haven't been footlights in this country since about 1920, but...
I say we bring them back. Let's bring back the footlights.
Absolutely. Uplighting is much better.
And talking about dames, my goodness, chatting to yourself is great. There's people, Andrew Ryan, who's fantastic, Neil Ryan, sorry, your Ugly Sister partner. But to join the damehood, it's actually quite a privilege, because I got so much support from people when I first played Widow Twanky.
It's like a whole world that when I first got cast. It was like a whole world. I just thought, I'm just going to go to Wolverhampton and wear a dress. But there is a whole world.
Like little community. Isn't that support wonderful with anything?
It's amazing.
I remember seeing Les Dawson as I think he was the nurse in Babes in the Wood, is it, at the Hippodrome?
Yeah,
probably, probably gosh, mid-80s, and some great people have played dames, haven't they? And it's just lovely to join the club.
There are fabulous names, like you mentioned, Nigel Ellicott and Andrew Ryan, Brad Pitt, wonderful dames, but who are known within our world, perhaps, but not to a wider public.
It's thank you for welcoming me into the literal bosom of the Dame family. Yes, thank you so much.
The bosom you can hang up.
Yeah, thank God, crikey. Now that's really.
Then I begin to imagine how brilliant you are as a Dame. I mean, you're absolutely kind of perfect for it.
You know what? I love it. It's great fun, and I think I was the oldest prince in the business for years, with my hair sprinkles on and singing One Direction in a Cuban heel and a cape. I was ready to try something different, so I'm very grateful. You're so multi-skilled. You perform at 54 Below in New York,
Yeah.
and you've toured the country with your cabaret on Atlantic Crossings as well. Is that a genre you love, that intimacy? Because it's a real difference, isn't it, to say appearing on the stage at the Palladium?
Yeah, it is. It's really different, and I absolutely love it. I'd always wanted to do it, and basically I did a show, which I can't even say the words of because we were treated so badly, and it all folded on the road, and none of us were paid and all of that. Which happens, but it was also handled badly. That was my real beef with it. Was that we weren't treated with any respect. And I just thought, you know what? I was walking home from the final performance, having not been paid, and I just thought, I need to do something which is mine. If I want to go and do it for 20 quid, that's my choice.
Exactly.
And so I thought, okay, I'm going to start. And I started to put something together. And, it's funny how things all sort of pan out, isn't it? I played the piano as well, and I was going to sing and play for the whole thing. And then I had I was sharing a bill at the Pheasant. No, I did a little thing at the Pheasant Tree, and it went quite well. And that was great. And I was sharing a bill. And then I just thought, you know what? Sod it. And I booked a night at the Crazy Cocks, and I thought, what can go wrong? What can go wrong? If I end up playing it to 3 friends, we'll have a laugh, we'll go out for dinner, and that's that.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks before, I slipped down some stairs and broke my wrist. So it meant I couldn't play the piano. And at that time, I then grabbed a lovely man called Tom Carradine, who happened to be free, who had played for me at the Pheasant Tree, and I'd known him for years. And he was free, and he said, yes, I'll come and play for you. And I managed to play some of it with one finger because it was my left hand. So I was all right doing the arrangements that were in my head. And I just loved it because cabaret is very different to a concert in that it's much more about the stories you tell. So and when I'm putting a program together, I either pick the song and think, well, why am I picking the song? What's the story behind this? Or I come up with a story that I want to tell. Yeah. So you try and you tell honest stories that reach people on different levels and intersperse them. So really, for me, the songs are the secondary thing. It's the stories that make it. So that I always say it's like a dinner party where one person talks a lot more than everyone else. And I love it. People having their, sat around and they've got their nibbles and their drink or whatever, and or the Pheasant Tree, they're ordering their pizza, and it's just a lovely atmosphere. It feels like you're in somebody's front room, just chatting away. And I've been really, really lucky, and I've been foolhardy or silly or brave or whatever, and just booked things and gone, oh, if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. I made 2 albums, and I thought, this is really grand. Why am I making 2 albums? And I thought, do you know what? If I die with 2,000 copies of an album on the stairs, who cares?
Ben, 100%. I think that's an amazing message, Ben. That as soon as you said, you just thought, sod it, I'm going to book somewhere and just go for it. How rewarding when you do that. Like you say, you're in control of your diary. Creatively, you have your own input and control as well. But just thinking, you know what is the worst that could happen here? Like you say, you might pass away with 2,000 copies of your album, but who cares? It's like you've done something for yourself, and when you're using your skill as you do to make people happy, that's like a double win, isn't it? I completely commend you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think throughout my working life, although I did 2 years in Beauty and the Beast and I did 18 months in Chitty, Bang Bang, I've never loved long runs. I don't know. I think it's always been the creative process that I liked. So I've never been very good at saying no. So I've always just gone, yes. And I ended up directing because someone said, would you direct this? And I was like, yes. And then I thought, oh my God, what am I can't, I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, and then you learn, don't you, from an experience?
Well,
you learn from that.
I sat down. I've worked with some amazing directors. So this is what I'm going to say now is about the absolute minority. But I've worked with some really disorganized, unpleasant, terrible directors. And I thought, well, I'm organized and I'm nice. So the worst I'm going to be is rubbish. But everyone will go home having had a nice time.
So, completely.
And you learn on. So I think you just say yes. And also when you're self-employed, you just have to say yes and then worry about it afterwards.
Well, that's it, because it can be a bun fight, can't it? We're creative, and I'm certainly, I'm a soft soul, Ben, and sometimes it's hard to kind of keep revved up, to keep ploughing on and trying to generate your own work. So if you can generate your own, which you do, then wonderful.
And I also think if you're generating your own work or doing whatever it is, like with your podcast, you're always working.
Yeah.
Always, even if you're only asking yourself, what are you up to? You're going, well, actually, I'm doing a podcast I'm working. So I do a lot of old time music hall. I do cabaret, and so there's always, touch wood, it must be 20 years since there's been nothing in the diary. That might only be an old time. I don't mean this disparaging, but it might only be an old time music hall in 3 months' time in Clacton. But there is something in the diary. And if there's not, I was coming to Panto, and it was at the end of Panto, and it all looked a little bit quiet, and I was like, oh, I don't know. So I phoned Jessica Martin and our MD, who plays for both our cabarets, Inga Davis-Rutter. I phoned them and said, what are you doing on these 3 dates? And they said, nothing. And I said, have you got lots of work coming up? They were like, not really. And I said, okay, I'm going to book the CAA, which is a private club in London who do performances. I'm going to book Denville Hall, and I'm going to book Brinsworth House. So we finished Panto knowing that we had 3 private cabarets in the diary. And we got together and we rehearsed a new show and we put something together. And actually, after that, all 3 of us kind of then picked up other work. And I think it just sat at home waiting for the phone to ring is not a good place for anyone.
And it's feel good, isn't it? And mentally for me, deciding to start on the podcast, it's something that, it's been so important for me. And likewise, it's knowing that every day there's just something to work towards and to produce. And it's meant for your mental health.
I think it's also really good. And you are absolutely brilliant at this. You're, from my point of view, as well as being a fantastic performer and actor and everything else, your greatest talent is just being you.
Oh, crikey.
So by doing this podcast, you're getting to show the world you. The last job I did at Salisbury, I came back upstage. I was sharing a dressing room with a lovely guy called George Olney. And I came upstairs.
George. Brilliant.
And there was a letter from Cameron Mackintosh on my desk offering me a job in Mary Poppins because it was time the world saw my Mary. And I just turned around to him and I said, you've worked with Ben Harlow, haven't you? And he was like, yes. And he's like, you stole this from Ben Hart. And so your joy is being spread everywhere. But that's your joy that you spread into a company, which is huge. It spreads through into other people. And it's brilliant when it catches up with you.
Ben, I have to say, you bring so much joy to people. I was sat there, during your cabaret at Denville Hall, and you made people feel so happy. And what was lovely as well to hear how beautifully you play and sing Noel Coward. You've got a real affiliation with his work, haven't you?
And again, it's just sort of happened. I got cast in Noel and Gertie, a production which is about Noel Coward and Gertrude Lawrence.
Yeah.
And I've done little bits of Coward, and so it just keeps coming back into my life, and I've done more and more Coward. Next week I'm doing a transatlantic crossing on the Queen Mary, and this year is Coward's 125th, the anniversary of his birth, and so I'm doing a cabaret, an afternoon, and it's readings and poems and songs and stuff with Patricia Hodge.
How wonderful!
And then there's going to be a big gala celebrating Coward at the end of the year, which I'm going to do a tiny part of. And I'm doing, I think, a rehearsed reading of one of his forgotten plays. Again, just because I just go, I think this is worth doing. I want to do this. Let's make it happen. And so Coward has come in and out. And actually, I just like to take the material and go, I look at this with a fresh pair of eyes and go, how can I do this? How can I make this happen? So I did, my second album was all Coward songs. And I took some of his poems and I took songs by his contemporaries, mixed them with some Gershwin and made it, just to put a new slant on some of it. But I'm very grateful. Judi Dench has just written a book called Shakespeare, The Man Who Pays the Rent, and I think I might have to do that for Coward, The Man Who Pays the Rent.
So when do you set sail then? Where do you go from New York?
This is so glamorous. I mean, I'm there. I'm saying all of this, but I'll be there in my Primark shorts. We fly to New York on Wednesday, and then we've got a couple of nights in New York, and we set sail on Saturday and arrive back in the UK the following Sunday. And
wonderful!
It's called London Theatre at Sea, and my husband Julian is producing it, and So I get roped into these things. But I'll lead a
Oh,
passenger choir,
fantastic.
which I did before, and it's so much fun. It's just, I mean, they perform their songs at the end of the week on the stage. Tom
Amazing.
Carradine's on it, and we're doing sing-alongs in
Oh,
the atrium, musical theatre sing-alongs, and I'm
how
doing my cabaret as
wonderful.
well with some other people on board. Jason Manford's coming, Patricia Hodge. There's set
Oh my
design. So it's a really,
goodness.
it's a great week.
Yeah, and I can imagine the sing-alongs are so uplifting for the passenger. And again, you're spreading the joy, Ben. People love to sing, and it can be so uplifting, can't it?
Yeah, I mean that's very kind. They that West End Live thing literally came about because at the last minute a show couldn't. I don't know. Someone was ill and they couldn't turn up. And there was
Right.
like 15 minutes, and everybody's running around and it's like, I could get the crowd to sing Do Re Mi, and it just became a thing. But it wasn't. It's very kind of you to say it wasn't really about me. It was about the fact that you had 15, 20,000 people who were all musical theatre fans. And suddenly the spotlight was on them. It was their moment
Yeah.
to be the stars of West End Live. That was the joy of that.
Well, Grease, Ben, you played Eugene. I mean, what an iconic film and musical. Was that good fun to go into? At the Cambridge Theatre, wasn't it?
Is at the Cambridge. It was my first sort of long run. I'd done a panto when I left college, and then I did a rather short-lived West End run with the fabulous icon that is Dame Edna Everage.
Yeah.
And then I went into Greece for a year, and it was amazing. It was I loved. Having said I'm not a mad fan of long runs. I loved every second of that. It felt, because I was going into the West End to work every day. I was 22, whatever.
Yeah.
It felt like this is what the 3 years at drama school. This is what this was for.
Yeah.
And it was lovely because people could, lots of coach parties from the St Mary's players, and they all came up to support, and you felt like it wasn't just me that was doing the job. It felt like everyone who had supported me and encouraged me, it felt like a little bit of a payback as well, if that doesn't sound too idiotic.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
You felt like everybody had come on that journey as well, and they went, yay, and you were like, gosh, it was worth me asking you to come and see me in a concert to help me pay my fees, because I've done this. And I always think, I don't like looking back. I'm not good at I like looking forward. I think it's much more healthy to look forward. But you look back and I don't know, you sort of forget when you did things or what you did, don't you? But then sometimes you just stop and you have to go, yeah, I've done that. And you know what? If I don't ever work again, if I never do anything else, I did that and I did that and I did that, and that's all right.
Yeah, you can quite easily forget what you've done.
I have such a vivid memory of us on tour in Beauty and the Beast, and we were like, Eric, money was always tight. And we shared a room, twin beds.
Oh my God.
One was facing one way, one was facing the other. And we were like, Eric and Ernie, I think it was in York. And we probably hadn't booked digs till the Friday, and we opened on the Tuesday or something, So we were there.
That would have been early for me.
With our Winciette 90s. And it was when 24, the TV series, was just massive.
Yes, my God.
We all bought, I think like 8 of us bought a series each because we couldn't afford to buy them all. And so it was like, you watch this and pass it over. And I remember lying in bed till about 3 a.m. because every episode ended with a cliffhanger. And you'd be going, you can't go to sleep yet. You need to watch this one. You were one episode ahead of me, passing the discs over.
Oh gosh, I do remember
Happy
that.
days.
Dear, my goodness.
Come on.
Just quickly want to ask you about your work for Acting for the Others. What a great organisation, especially they've given so much support to the creative industry, haven't they?
Yeah, I think any of those, it's the theatre industry, we're all self-employed, and it's hard being self-employed. The money, if something goes wrong, then where do you turn? There are 15 or 16 theatrical charities. Acting for Others is the umbrella for nearly all of them. And this is for everybody in the theatre industry, backstage, front of house, on stage, creatives. There are people out there to help. I did, with a lovely girl called Sophie Sims, we arranged a couple of things called the West End Bake Off, which I kept seeing online, all these theatres having bake-offs in-house. And I thought, well, why don't we bring that out and sell the cake to the public and raise money for Acting for Others? It was unbelievable.
Oh my gosh.
I pulled some favors, and Biggins and Barbara Windsor came and judged it. And we raised, a couple of £1,000. But what it started to do is get the shows remembering that there was help. And that I'm long not involved in that side of things, although I'm still an ambassador for the charity. And they've just done the West End Flea Market, which is what the Bake Off eventually became, and raised £74,000 in like 4 hours.
So good.
It's huge. And it's like going and doing a bit of entertainment at Denville Hall or Brinsworth House, the 2 retirement homes for performers. Just give an hour. Go, and you will be welcomed with open arms. B, you will have the most interesting talks with people who have done the most incredible things. It's extraordinary, and I just it's really it's tough. But when you're hustling, trying to make ends meet and everything, if you know there's a community out there who've got your back, it's really good. So I would say to anybody in the industry, anybody who's struggling, or just reach out. Sometimes even if it's not financial, they've got helplines, and they've got contact. Everything's confidential, and you're not alone. You're really not alone. They help.
Last year, Buckingham Palace, with your wonderful husband Julian Bird, to receive his OBE. How was that? You must have been so proud.
Oh, I was bursting. I mean, I'm obsessed with the royals. I've got Princess Margaret teacups and everything. So for me to go to the palace, and it was wonderful. And Julian got the king. The king gave him his OBE, which was, just to give it some context, he ran Sultan UK Theatre for 12 years. But also the main thing, I think it was one of the big things it was for, was that during the pandemic, he set up a charity with Sam Mendes called the Theatre Artist Fund, which helped a lot of
course,
and everybody in the industry. And that's what it came. So that was amazing. And through Julian's work with the Oliviers and stuff, I've met Camilla a couple of times. And actually the Queen Camilla, the second time I met her, Julian said, "Oh, and this is Benjy." But I know we've met before, and I was like,
"Oh my god!"
Oh. I mean, she obviously only knew that because she'd been briefed. But I was like, "Yeah, we're like that. We're like that."
Well, they love their theatre. I know King Charles is a big fan of the Goons, isn't he, and that kind of genre.
Yes.
But we were lucky enough to be invited. I was doing panto at the Theatre Hall in Bath. He was Prince Charles then, to Highgrove, to do an abridged version of Snow White. I was playing the Prince then. It was probably 1964, something like that. And we just presumed it'd be for his staff, like a little Christmas treat. Anyway, we go into this outhouse, turn the corner, there's a grand piano there, and literally in front of his fireplace, with his security stood behind him, was Prince Charles, now King Charles, and it was just him. And oh my god, I could not wait to phone my grand blesser and my mum. Yeah. So there I was on a Saturday morning singing Michael Bublé in a key too high for me to Prince Charles. But the best bit was John Money, who plays the comic in Bath, brilliant comic. He walked on, he was like, "Yeah, you better watch that evil queen. She needs a checkup from the neck up." And he was like. Oh my god, what a morning. But it's occasions like that and people you meet that you just think, what a world to be involved in. It's fantastic, isn't it?
And then you go back and you get back to Bath and you go, "Oh God, I've got 2 shows. I'm just going to Greg's for sausage." Do you know what I mean? But but then you go, look at, it's just brilliant. So those highs are those moments, and those are the things you cling on to when you're schlepping around with no work. Those are the things you cling on to.
Oh, it's been so lovely to chat, Ben. But love to ask my guests at the end of our chat each week on Benjy's Cafe, what's on the dinner menu tonight? Are you out for dinner or are you cooking?
We're not out for dinner tonight, no. And actually, we're separate tonight. Julian's got something on and I've got something on.
Oh, okay.
And also, I've got to. I tried on for the Queen Mary. I've got to have my dress suit, and I tried it on.
Oh wow!
And it's sailing to the wind. So I think tonight, Ben, as it's me cooking, and I'm no major cook, it'll be just some grilled fish and salad tonight.
Oh, very nice.
I could ideally do with losing about 1.5 stone by next Tuesday.
Well, I'm sure you look very dapper. Have a fantastic time aboard.
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll be wonderful.
And thank you for having me, Ben. You're just so generous with everything, and all those words you said in that introduction, things like best and brilliant and top and all of that. Thank you for using them. I'll pay you later. I'm just a turn trying to earn a crust.
Well, you do more than that, Ben. You bring a lot of joy to a lot of people, and you've made me feel fantastic this morning. So good luck for everything, both, and thanks for joining me in Benjy's Cafe.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Benjy's Cafe podcast, and hope Ben made you smile. Make sure you hit follow so every episode gets sent straight to your phone. And if you can, please leave a review. No booking required, available wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget, a new episode every Tuesday. In episode 16, I'll be joined by the actor Kay Murphy. I'll get the kettle on. Have a great day.